Welcome to my super type A attempt at being Zen, the podcast. My name is Risha York, and I will be your host. If you are overworked, overtired, overstretched, overwhelmed, and just over it, you are in the right place. We like to say we are currently working towards Zen-ish. I'm thrilled that you've joined us. Let's see who will be supporting us on our path to Zen today. Welcome back to my super type A attempt at being Zen. We have the wonderful enjoyment of having Nina Purewal on our show today. She is the co-author of Let That Shit Go, which I think should probably really resonate for anybody who's listening to this podcast. So Nina, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's such an honor to be here. My name is Nina Purewal, as you said. I am the co-author of Let That Shit Go. I am also the founder of Pure Minds, where we do mindfulness, meditation, mental health, corporate wellness workshops for companies. I'm also an executive grief ambassador for the Season Center for Grieving Children, which is one of the most honorable roles I hold. And I'm just out here trying to help people find peace and happiness in the everyday through very practical solutions. And my ultimate is to give people hope through adversity.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. I saw you speak in the fall, and I was so excited to meet you in person. I felt like it was kismet because I actually use your book as part of my required reading for my course, my super type A attempt at being Zen.
I totally remember that day, and you came up to me and we took some selfies.
I was so excited. And it's so rare that the books that I have on my list, the authors come anywhere close to where I am, since I'm, up here in the boonies, headed on your way up to Muskoka. So I was in shock, and I was like, that's the universe telling me I have to get my butt down there. I was on the fence as to whether I was going. I saw your name and I'm like, I'll be there.
Oh, thank you so much. I so appreciate the support.
It was so great. So tell us about, how did this book come about? What were you hoping it would do for others?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I want to say thank you too for making it a part of your curriculum. It just means so much. I actually, funny story, never had any intentions to write a book. Wasn't a fan of English growing up. Never, a lot of people have that on their bucket list. I want to be an author. What happened was Kate, my co-author, and I were doing workshops in the city at the Drake Hotel on, learn how to meditate. Actually, she founded a business and had a bunch of courses, and 2 of them were on meditation and mindfulness. And at this time I was off on mat leave. I was doing a lot of healing for myself. And she said, hey, do you want to come in and teach these 2 courses? And I said, yeah. And I'd worked corporate up till then. I was trying to figure out, how do I start bringing ancient wisdom to the workplace? I knew what I wanted to do. I just didn't know how it was going to manifest. And I said, yeah, I'd love to write and teach these courses. And we started doing that. She put swearing on the titles, and that was the cool thing to do, like years ago, learn how to effing meditate, mindful AF. And they went viral. And lucky for us, HarperCollins caught wind of them, and they were like, we love how you're positioning, mindfulness and happiness. Are you open to writing a book? And we were like, yeah, absolutely. So one thing led to another. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of intricate stories. One time we almost walked away from the opportunity, but we ended up just landing in a great place. They gave us 9 weeks to write it. So it was very intense. And went from there. And it's basically my heart and soul, and Kate's too, on paper, all the life lessons we learned up until then. It's 120 tips on, as I said, how to find more happiness and peace in the everyday. And it's just a little guidebook to help you kind of move through and navigate all the things that our mind throws at us.
I love it so much. I will throw it on in my car as I'm driving to an event, especially something that gives me anxiety. Like if I'm on my way to a keynote or something, I'm like, you know what? We're going to mellow out, and I'll throw on a chapter in the car because I have it on Audible or Google Play or whatever. And I'm like, okay, yeah, see, look, Kate and Nina are just telling you to chill out. It's cool. You got this.
It's not easy, right? It's not easy, but yeah, that's wonderful. I love to hear that. And the whole premise is that, and what I learned, I spent a year in a monastery or an ashram, and the basis of ancient wisdom is saying our true nature is happiness, it is joy, it's love, it's all these wonderful things. And if you think of yourself as an infant or a toddler, you are inherently happy. Or if you have kids in your life, like your aunt and uncle, or your own kids, you see how kids are inherently happy when they come into this world.
Yeah.
And what happens over time? A parent says something to us, a mean teacher, a coach along the way, and we start to build these grooves and these belief systems about ourselves. And they become more ingrained in tweenhood and teenhood and adulthood. And suddenly we're fully functioning adults feeling like we're not good enough. And
Yeah.
so the whole process of, let that shit go is letting go of all the things that are obstructing us from going back to that true nature. So people say, oh, I'm on a search to find happiness. I always say, you don't need to find it out
Not
there.
out
It's
there.
right here.
In here. Yeah.
To let go of. So every tip is another thing that we kind of hold on to. And every chapter is another theme of things we hold on to that are obstructing us from showing up as our best selves.
And when it came out into the world, what was the response? Like, what were people saying to you?
Yeah, it was very well received. It went global very quickly. HarperCollins was very happy with the sales of the book. It took us 18 publisher rejections in the US in 2 years to get into the US because we're Canadian and we're not famous. We don't have a crazy platform and this, that.
Right.
But now it's a seller in airports in the US. So I think it's more the numbers speak for itself. And we really wrote it for women between the age of 25 and 45 who are busy, but we're hearing back from all genders, all, age groups of how the book is affecting them. And that just means more to me than anything. When I get those notes from people who are like, wow, your book helped me unlock this thing after 10 years, or your book, saved me through this. It's just like, it makes everything, all the blood, sweat, and tears and the vulnerability worth it. So,
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
I couldn't be
Absolutely.
happier.
What
Yeah.
was the intention? Like, was the intention we want to just help people along their journey? Was it we just want to share
Yeah.
our journey?
Yeah, it's a great question. The intention of the book was the way HarperCollins approached it was, the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark
Yeah, I do.
Manson.
Yep.
Yeah. So they wanted kind of a mindfulness version of it because mindfulness this was in 2018. So it was starting to kind of be this topic, but there was all this talk of, the initial outline of the book had mindfulness and meditation as the first few chapters. And they said, people are going to find that way too intimidating. We don't want to make people feel like they have to add something to their life. They have to start meditating. Like, people are already too busy.
Yeah.
So the intent was like, now the last 2 chapters are mindfulness and meditation. So it's like, by the way, this big mountain you climb through all these tips is mindfulness. We actually didn't even use the word until the second last chapter. So the intent was just, people are busy. They might not have time to meditate. They might not have time to, start a new thing. So how do we slowly, and that's what I love about mindfulness. It's all about the lens through which you're viewing life.
Absolutely.
You don't do something like go to a class. You just have to start shifting how you're looking at things.
Yeah. It's funny you should say that, because through my course, it's very similar. That's what appealed to me about the book, because my course is built for same range women in that group, as well as women who are super type A, who function at a very high achievement level, who are high energy, very driven, but they don't know how to relax.
Right.
They don't know how to come down. And it's a real struggle, right? It's a real struggle. And so in my other course, I have another course called Lead Without Permission. Anytime I would get someone who came through that course who was type A and very responsibility driven, I'd say, so, in week 10, we'd talk about meditation, and they're like, yeah, no, I don't do that. I can't do that. I can't. And I'm like, so you can, but I understand where you're coming from. And it was always like a big fight as we get up to there. No, I won't. I'm like, just go with me. But by the time they get to week 10, they're ready for it because we've done all that prep work
Good for you.
ahead of time, that then it's like, see, it's not actually nearly as hard as you thought it was.
Yes.
It's also not like 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Start somewhere.
A world of difference every day.
Yes.
Right? And when we start to look at it that way, you don't have to sit still. You don't have to block all those other thoughts out of your head. They come and they go. It's okay.
Yeah.
Right? And my super type A folks were just like, I can't sit still. I understand. Do it while you're walking. Do it while you sit in the bath. Do it while whatever it is, in the shower. I'm totally a shower meditator. Right?
Yes.
If you need to multitask, but do it in a way where it's still serving you, right?
Yes.
So I loved that about that book, because as it built up, I was like, ooh, these ladies are smart how they've built this, because this really appeals to the audience of my course. Because as soon as I say mindfulness or meditation, they're like, yeah, I've heard of that. It just doesn't work for me.
Absolutely. And, I have to say, I was an A-type. I'm still an A-type. Gosh, I'm an entrepreneur. Like I worked in corporate, very, stressful corporate jobs most of my career.
Yeah.
And there is a way to find that duality. And all of my clients are pretty much hardcore corporate. I do executive leadership workshops. They're all type A.
Yeah.
And there's a way to manage your thoughts better, so they're not obstructing your focus, your efficiency, your productivity. I mean, people associate mindfulness. It's like they can't make the connection that, oh, this can actually help me in the work setting. And I feel like there is that little bit of a distinction between mindfulness and meditation. And it's like meditation, and yet anybody can do it. I have to say, that's one of my other objectives, is to make sure that people know meditation is just not for people who want to run in the mountains and like sit there for hours and hours. And start small. Like, I tell them, start with a minute a week and then go up to 2 minutes and then go up, and it's like going to the gym for your mind. And I get it.
Exactly.
Being alone with your thoughts can be scary. It is a process. But once you overcome that initial hump and you start getting more comfortable sitting in meditation or, showering through, building that muscle of being aware of your thoughts and moving through them. Mindfulness is more in the everyday, as you're opening your laptop, instead of feeling the anxiety of, oh my God, I have so much, oh my gosh, I have a job that pays me this much. And like, or just like, I am opening my laptop, just being present at the moment, right? There's so many, and that's why every opportunity, every minute, every interaction is an opportunity to practice.
Absolutely.
Being mindful. And
like I always say to my clients, I'm not pitching you enlightenment here. Like, we're not going to ascend to ultimate, all-knowing, omni,
you might get there. I'm not
if you get there.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not a crazy goal, like just one day at a time, one step at a time. And
it's so much smaller than that. It's so much smaller than enlightenment. It's literally, I'm just trying to help you find a little balance.
I love that. Exactly.
Right? Just a little balance, a little peace every day.
And I find with A-types as well, they're hard on themselves. A lot of them are perfectionists. Absolutely. Grew up being perfectionists, really struggle with that. So what comes from that? Lack of self-love, a shit ton of imposter syndrome.
Oh, so much. Yeah.
Performing, not showing up as ourselves. These are all different parts of the book. But when you're a perfectionist, nobody's perfect. We're all human. We're all going to have those things. So the more we accept who we are and understand who we are and work through who we are, the more easy and gentle and compassionate we're going to be on ourselves versus pressure that, oh my God, everything has to be perfect and lined up.
Well, and I think when you function as a type A person, different things bring you bliss and joy than other people. So I'm always, one of my big pet peeves, and I'm sure people on the podcast have heard this before, but when someone says, just have a bubble bath, I'm like, no, that's not going to do it for me.
it's going to temper. I mean, I think there is a place for spending a day at the spa or talking to your, it activates the parasympathetic nervous
Yeah.
system. Is a place, but it's also a little bit of a band-aid because it's like, okay, let me get some calm, which is good. Calms your system down, but then I'm going to go back to my stressful life. So
Yeah.
they're not lifelong. And this whole notion of self-love and self-care and self-care Sundays and all that, yes, it's important. But from my perspective, self-love starts in your mind up
Absolutely.
here. How are you talking to yourself? What's the narrative? What are you saying to yourself? And that's the part where we miss when we do the whole like, oh, let me go out and self-care for a day. That's great and that's important. But
Yeah.
what's actually going on up here?
Yeah, that in the back of your mind, I always say there's someone sort of like you picture you're in a classroom and that kid with the spitballs going. So every time something in my
Yes.
brain says something that's not nice, I turn around, I'm like, that's enough.
Yeah. Yes.
I treat it like that kid in the classroom, right? That's
Yes,
enough.
that's
That is
enough.
not how we deal with this. And then I give it no more attention because the more
Right.
attention you give it,
The
the
more you're,
more voice it has.
yes, the louder it becomes. And that's it's a really great point because, it's these neural networks in our own mind that we're trying to actually, from childhood, that I'm
Yes.
not up or, oh my God, I got A types or like you get a review, amazing year-end review. And there's one thing on there because every manager has to put the your areas of opportunity or constructive feedback. And that's all
All you
you're
think
focused on.
about. Yeah.
Think about it. So it's like letting go of that neural network. This is neuroplasticity. There is science behind this and creating a new one. What's the
Yeah.
new thing that I can start saying to myself? And that's where it becomes really empowering because, we start to gain better control over our thought. We go from the mind controlling us to us controlling the mind. And I don't say this in the book, but I started, saying this more, overtly during my workshops is treat your mind like a child, like you're saying, that spitball, and give it a name.
Yeah.
So it has its own idea because otherwise our thoughts we become our thoughts.
Yep.
And it's like, no, our thoughts are just a part of us. If we can be a witness, like the very first chapter is awareness, if we can be aware
Yeah.
and yeah, you start having those conversations. Like, let's say the mind is Johnny. Johnny, I'm not going there today. No.
Yeah.
And so, and I had a mentor say to me, once you get into the fifth or sixth thought about something, that's when you really start going down the rabbit hole. So
Yeah.
if you can catch yourself and be like, no, I'm not taking that spitball today. No. And
Yeah.
refocus. Imagine how much efficiency you're
Yeah.
bringing to your mind in your everyday and your
There's
work.
Yes, absolutely. And there's so much value, and I call it naming the monster. Like when you have a feeling or an anxiety or okay, I'm feeling anxiety right now. I'm going to name that monster. It's anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where's that coming from? What's triggering it? How, okay, now is this a realistic feeling for what I'm seeing? Like, am I reacting to the fact that there's no milk in the house with high anxiety and I'm vibrating at a level that is way more than I need to? Or am
Yeah.
I reacting to the fact that I maybe just got in a car accident and then so this is a warranted feeling,
Exactly.
right? Because that whole fight or flight, freeze or fawn situation, like where am I at in it? I need to name it. When we name it, we can deal with it, we can parse
Something
it,
with it.
right?
Right.
And I mean,
Yeah.
I was really lucky because I was raised by a therapist.
Oh, wow.
So I had these tools in my toolbox without knowing it for my whole life.
Right. Yeah.
And as I started to meet people on my journey through life, I'm like, oh, you don't do that?
You're like my mom, my parents, or whichever parent built that into my like thought
It's
system and my
it's
thought process.
built into my brain, right? So there's little things that I feel like I'd been doing forever that had served me for so long. But then at the same time, my super type A temperament
Yes.
would just take those anxieties and be like, doesn't matter. Like, just go, just achieve, just get, just be there. You have to be the best of this and perfectionist in that and make up for the
Yeah.
difference. And right. Like, that's how my brain went. So it took me time as an adult to come back to those tools and be like, right, that's what they're for.
That's works so well. And I love your distinction because I think it's really important because there is that toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing that's out there. So it's important to feel. And that's a big part of our book too, that, and both Kate and I have gone through a lot of life trauma. And I think I suppressed for my first decade. I was like, everything's fine and I'm going to be all spiritual and it's all good and good vibes only. And it's like, no, acknowledge the anxiety. If it's coming from a place that you have to feel, it's Jay-Z that says, feel it to feel it, to heal it. It's important to acknowledge those emotions. We're not trying to like meditate our way through, the emotions, because we're human. And then there's a place for meditation and helping you work through that. But if stuff's coming up and like you said, you just got in a big car accident, no need to be like, okay, I'm just going to be mindful. You feel it and you own it and you work through the motions, but then you also keep this perspective of, mindfulness and meditation where that can elevate.
And it's funny how that feeling those negative emotions, we had a guest on a couple weeks ago who's a psychotherapist, and she was saying how people's biggest fear is negative emotions. She said through her practice, that's the biggest fear across the board. Wow. And isn't that interesting, right? And the irony of it is feeling and parsing those emotions brings you more joy.
Right.
When you feel them and you're like, okay, I'm sad. I just need to sit in the sad and work through it. You can come out the other side more joyful.
Right. And you give yourself permission, and this is true for meditation. It's like when people say, oh, I can't meditate. Why? It's the biggest thing I got. I can't meditate. Why? My thoughts don't stop. Guess what? The thoughts don't stop. The tiny mind is constant. And, I've been meditating for 18 years. I've never had a meditation where my thoughts stop. I always have, 10, 20, 100,000, depends on my day. So, allowing them to come in and not resisting them, like not resisting the negative emotion, like, oh, I can't go this way. Let me distract myself. Allow it to come in, feel the anxiety, feel the sadness, feel the heaviness, cry it out, talk it out, and then let it go.
And then let it go.
A big traumatic event. Yeah, that might happen over and over, but let it come in. And even with the thoughts, I always use the analogy. It's like clouds, like you're the ever-present sky. I know it's cheesy, but with meditation, it's like, let the thoughts come in like little cloud bubbles. And sometimes I actually see my thought in a cloud bubble and see it float and watch it float away. And you learn that skill. And then in real life, in everyday life, you learn how to manage it and move through the thoughts so much better.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the practice, right? The more you practice, the better you get at it. I also love like a lighthouse analogy. I'll meditate on specific words or feelings, and in my mind's eye, picture the word. So say we use the word love, I picture the word. What does it feel like to feel love? How do I feel when I feel loved? Picture each individual letter. What color are they? Think about all of that. And that allows me to ground myself with that feeling and that sense of calm and peace and whatever. And I use my normal 5 words are love, peace, happiness, health, and wealth. And I circle through them. And then sometimes those thoughts come in and drag me out. And then I'm like, and now we're back to peace. Peace. What color is peace? Look at that giant letter P. Like, let's just refocus on, and it allows me to come back to a place where I feel grounded and I understand how my heart connects to these feelings. Because if I'm trying to focus on the word happiness and I'm not feeling so happy, other thoughts are going to come in. And so I'm like, okay, now's the time to process this.
I love that. And and like, how often we're so focused, especially the type A, on, the fear, the anxiety, the worry, the 1% feedback that I got that wasn't perfect, how often are we actually cultivating love and sitting in peace and sitting in what happiness feels like? I think that's such an empowering exercise to learn to own that emotion and to give ourselves permission to sit in it. It's like type A. It's like, no, I have to be feeling something and I have to be busy all the time. Blah, blah, blah. Give yourself permission to sit in the good and watch how that works for you as a favor instead of pulling you down.
I've actually found that through my practice, the biggest thing us type A folks are not doing is celebrating and enjoying the joy.
Yes. And, I do corporate workshops as well. And that's a whole section when I do a workshop on self-care or self-love or imposter syndrome. It's like, and I was there, in marketing, you work your fucking ass off. I don't know if I can
Yes.
swear, but
No, you swear all you want. We're here for that.
that's part of the thing. To get a launch, and it takes, 2 years from start to finish. And then the thing is finally launched. And by the time it's launched and it's in market and sales is working, guess what? We're on to the next.
Yeah.
Like, are we stopping and
Pause.
celebrating the massive thing that we just created? Are we doing that as a team? Like even in a work setting, it's like, we're on to the next. We're not building that collaboration, that camaraderie as a team, celebrating. And by the way, it's okay to not work for 10 seconds and have cake and celebrate it,
Yeah, I think this is the other challenge, is the need to be forever productive.
Yes. Oh.
And I mean, I think I'm trying, even for myself, and this is why this podcast exists, because frankly, the course was built on, my life experience, the last decade of me trying to learn to relax. Um, because my mother was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and I was like, oh man, like that's coming my way if I can't learn to bring it down a notch. I'm way over. And then when she passed away, that really informed a lot of this course too, because it was like, listen, now I'm dealing with the grief of that and the constant feeling of responsibility around it and whatever else. And so taking all of that and putting it into the course, and then realizing the last week of the course is called Am I Zen Yet? And the answer is no. But you're working in that direction, right? And so you've learned a lot of skills over the last 9 weeks that are going to help you in the direction. But another thing that our psychotherapist guest had said too, instead of saying I'm working towards this goal or towards Zen, I'm orienting myself in that direction, which is a little bit more graceful, a little bit more kind. You're not aiming to hit it, because type A is so obsessed with getting to the goal.
Yeah. And that's the thing with meditation. There is no goal. There is no reward. And we talk about this in the book too. You don't get an Oscar for the best meditator. It's a very personal practice between you and you. And there's no compare. And that's why I say, you can't really teach meditate. You can give tips on meditation, but really it's about going inwards and even the practice itself. If 99% of the world loves Headspace and you're not feeling it, listen to that. If you want to do meditation or mantra meditation or sit in silence or chakra healing, whatever it is, nature sounds, whatever makes you feel peace in that moment, it's your journey to figure. There's no goal, and it's a ride. Like some meditations are, and that's the other thing I say, don't label your meditation as good or bad. Don't judge it. It just is. The fact that you took 3 minutes to sit today, even if your mind was really active, like that's okay. So it's not, it's a journey, and it's going to have an incredible trickle effect to the rest of your life. But it's not like one day I'm going to be Zen and then my life is going to change.
That's the reward, is the trickle effect. The reward is, I can honestly tell you some really, and I'm sure you have stories about this too, just magical, incredible things have happened to me because I sat and meditated on something and manifested something and said, this is about to happen. And I'm already grateful. And thank you, universe, for making this happen for me, because you've no idea how grateful I am. And literally, like, next day, bam. Yeah. And I'm like, okay.
Our thoughts are powerful.
You feel crazy for a minute, like, oh my God, no one's going to believe me.
That just happened. Yeah. Right. I just read Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza. He's a scientist, studies quantum physics and all this kinds of stuff, and has done MRI scans of the brain, when it comes to meditation.
It's on my list. Did you love it?
I love it's a hard read. There's lots of science in it, which is fine if you're an A-type or you like data. I started my career off in data analytics, so I loved all the charts and everything. But I already knew the importance and the power of thought. But after reading that book, it's like, oh my gosh, the power of thoughts and how our thoughts create our future. There is science behind this. So if we're manifesting and creating, you better believe the puzzle pieces start falling versus, oh my God, I can't do that. Oh my God, I can't do that. Oh my God, I'm never going to catch up.
Yeah.
It becomes your reality.
The
And
power of the subconscious is so magical. It's always working. Always. There's never a point where your subconscious turns off.
yes, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. It's incredibly powerful. And that's what we don't realize and lean into, because for type A's, it's not tangible.
We can't
It's not,
control it.
can't control it. So it
And the
has to
beauty
be
thing is, though, you can train it. So
yeah,
you can't control it, but you can train it. You can train it through positive affirmations and meditation and mindfulness. You can train it through goal setting, which type A's love. Type A's love a good goal.
have a good goal.
Right. So goal setting, and it's funny, through my Lead Without Permission course, this is a big part of that course. Because that's mostly geared towards people who feel maybe a little lost in the back of the boardroom, not really participating. Maybe they're in the wrong space, wrong job, something's not clicking for them, and they haven't really found their voice, their leadership role. And so that's who comes into that course. And as we go through it, we talk about different things. And near the end, we start to talk about goal setting. And I do it in a really specific way. And as people come into it, they're like, oh, yeah, I set goals. And I'm like, not like this, you don't. And we start to set these goals, and people are like, whoa, I never even thought of things this way. And I'm like, yeah, because it's about getting granular. It's about being very specific. You can't say one day I want to go to Europe.
Right.
You
Yeah.
have to say, I want to stay in this beautiful little place in Paris, France, and it's got the like twirly things on the little balcony, and I want to sit with my cup of cappuccino, and I want, like, you have to see it.
Yeah.
Like you can see your own living room.
Yeah. Get
And
specific.
then when you're looking, you're going to find it. And it's like, oh, that's the one. That's where I want to go. You're going to find the price. You're going to make it happen. You can't make things happen through being big.
You cannot. And it's funny. I don't, you probably remember the movie The Secret that came out like,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And again, that's a very vague, again, it's a very vague, the way that it's positioned and everything. But there was, I'll never forget this one story of this guy, and he created a vision board. He was talking about, the importance of a vision board, and then, packed it away. He had moved into a new home. It had been, I think 5 or 6 years. And they were just unpacking boxes and stuff that they hadn't for a while. And, he found this old vision board that he made for himself. And he looked up at it, and there was this mansion, a picture of a mansion that he put on, and he looked a little closer, and he's like, holy shit, that's my pool. He literally put a mansion on his vision board, unbeknownst to him, actually bought that house and didn't realize it for years later until he picked up his vision. So that's how they actually bought the exact same damn house. So that is how powerful
It's
our
amazing.
thought, our manifestations can be. And there is science in exactly how the brain works and the chemicals in the brain. And, when we focus on these things.
I know. I never want to go too woo, because I want people to understand that I'm also coming from a place of research and science, right? And I love it when they come together.
Yes.
And people who are very scientific minded are like, no, but that's just a bunch of, and I'm like, no, but wait, it isn't. There are people doing research on it, and it's real. There's so much we don't know. It's like we know more about space than we know about the ocean. We know more about the ocean than we know about what our brain is capable of doing.
Yes, I know. And I got into this in the 90s. Like I experienced some trauma and as a child. I'm sorry to hear about your mom, by the way. I've been,
Thank you.
That in there. I know it's very, grief is so heartbreaking. All of these tips and tools are only helpful in going through that process, but nonetheless, it's heart-wrenching to lose, especially your mom. And so, as a teen, I went through some, and so I've been studying this stuff since the 90s. And it's not until recently that all this neuroscience and neurology has come out on meditation. There's a woman, if for people who are interested, by the name of Sarah Lazar. I'm sure you might have heard of her, but she's associated with Harvard Medical School, and she has done many studies and MRI scans on the brain. But she did one where she took experienced practitioners and people who had never practiced meditation before. And for the people who had never practiced, she had them on a program, I think it was 27 minutes a day for 8 weeks. And as little as 8 weeks, their brains, like this, it changes the structure of your brain. Like there's many things that happen in the brain, but their brains mimic those of experienced practitioners.
Yeah.
And just, so when I heard that study, I thought, oh my gosh, this is what I have known to believe in the depths of my gut and soul. But to see the signs,
the shift happens so quickly.
Yeah, it does.
Right. And as soon as you find it, you find that stuff, the mantras that work for you, or the affirmations that work for you, whatever it is that sings to your heart.
Yeah.
The shift is immediate. It's immediate.
It's incredible. It is. And that is where the A types have to just take the leap of trust.
Yes. That faith, it's have faith.
Have faith. And then the result, maybe it's not a number that you can see, but you will start to see you're less reactive to your thoughts. You're less reactive to the people that used to just get under your skin. You can handle
I feel like a better parent.
Oh gosh, better parent, better
if I don't
partner,
meditate.
Child.
Oh yeah. If I don't meditate for a few weeks, I see myself getting like snippy with the kids and snippy with my husband, not in like a mean way, but in a like sarcasm. Like I work with temperament tools. And so, one of the ways that we can tell that we're out of esteem is how we react to things. And so my personal temperament, there's 4, but I'm really bright in 3 of the 4. So unfortunately, I get all of those out of esteem symptoms. So one of them is sarcasm. So I'll start to get sarcastic and I'll be like, okay, Risha, we are not in a good place at the moment.
Right.
You need a minute.
You need a minute. And I notice it on the day, like the days I don't meditate, even, and sometimes it's 40 minutes, sometimes it's 5 minutes. It really depends on like when my daughter wakes up. I don't put pressure on it. I'm not like, okay, it has to be this. And I think that people have that perception, like it has to be a sport where you're playing it for, no, if that's what you have time for. But the days I don't, I notice I am just a little bit off my game. I'm not as, zen throughout the day.
Yeah, it's so true. So at what point in your life, you were saying you were going into this in the 90s, but at what point did you begin this search for ancient wisdom?
Then, in the 90s, just to be a little vulnerable here. So I lost my dad and brother when I was 16, to a murder suicide. So it was very intense. And the detectives on the case were like, he wanted to take you too. We had this whole premeditated plan. So it's just by luck of the draw. It really is just unbelievable how the story that went down, that I ended up out of the house. But I was at a loss, and my mom put me with child psychologists and psychiatrists, and all that stuff is important. But the only thing that was giving me any kind of hope and peace was ancient wisdom.
Right.
That's the only time I felt like I had answers, like true answers. Like, yes, you have to deal with your emotions, but just I started questioning, what's life all about? What's my purpose in life? What's the meaning of life? And that's when I started studying, and I went to business school, and I had a great career in sales and marketing and all that, but my spiritual side of me, and ancient, that always was kind of parallel pathing. And then, in 2010, I went to the ashram, but, I came back from that thinking, wow, there's so much practicality in this. Like you said, you think of the woo, but no, I worked in corporate, and I realized, wow, there's so much in here that can help. And that's what inspired me to start my business. But I really have been studying this stuff for, almost 25, 30 years.
Yeah. It's incredible. Your story is so touching. And I mean, I cried through the whole chapter of the book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It was a tough one to share. It was the first time I kind of publicly put it out there, but my whole thing was, giving people hope through diversity, that you can, I came out of that. I was a straight A student. I, couldn't even function. I couldn't even sit through a class without like leaving into my guidance. So I tell high school kids when I talk to them, you're talking to a best-selling author who failed English.
Yeah.
But thank you. I so appreciate it. And it helps me like continue to be vulnerable when I hear that, sharing that had an impact.
Yeah. I cry at everything, so you'll have to pardon me. But yeah, no, it's exactly that. It's funny, I think this idea of trauma, starting these journeys, is a pretty common and relatable thing.
Yeah. And, it's that whole, the harder you fall, the higher you bounce. And sometimes we have to go through the thing.
Yeah.
To really reflect when we're running on autopilot, and a lot of A types are doing that, just running on autopilot, work home, and we're not stopping and going, what's actually going on there? What do I need to heal? And this happened for a lot of people in the pandemic when they had to sit in quiet. You can't go see your friends, you can't do this, you can't engage in sports activities, and suddenly this happened to me at the ashram. I unplugged completely, and suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, what is actually going on in my mind? And it's scary. Look there, but sometimes it is those tragic events that make us, reevaluate life and go inwards. And they're awful, and they're heartbreaking, and they're devastating, but they catapult us.
They do. I agree. I mean, it's funny. I've almost died twice in my life. And in those instances, both times it was a kick in the ass to be like, refocus.
Yeah. What do you really want?
Like, what are we
important to you? What are we doing? And
what are we doing?
What are we doing? And, to continue with that vulnerability path, when I was pregnant, I also lost my mom years later at 33 to ALS, or Lou Gehrig. So, I can appreciate how challenging it is to lose a parent. But that's when I was like, enough's enough. Now this is my second reality check. So I had my daughter, and I lost my mom months apart. Or I lost my mom, then had my daughter. I was pregnant. And I thought, here we go. My brother passed away at 11. My dad was 44. My mom was 61.
Yeah.
Nothing is fucking guaranteed.
No, nothing.
Nothing is guaranteed. So what are you doing? Why are, and that's when I started my business. That's when I wrote I went through a few years of dealing with my grief, forgiving my dad. That was a whole thing, being a mom. And I took some time off. And then after that, I was like, there is really, I know it sounds overstated, but there's no time like the present. Why am
That's it.
And you just try. And I said, I'm going to give it a year. Doesn't happen. Go back to, and here we are 5 years and 50 clients later, it just, here we go.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 with Nina Purewal, co-author of Let That Shit Go. You definitely want to check out part 2. You do not want to miss this. So hop on over and start streaming that right now. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Visit www.yorkmotivational.com for more information on my Super Type A Attempt at Being Zen, the coaching program, Lead Without Permission, or visit our contact page to reach out to Risha. Wishing you all continued balance and fulfillment on your road to Zen.